They are immortals. Born across ages and continents, in times of war and peace, of faith and despair. They are not alone. There are others like them, some noble, some cruel. For centuries, they have lived among us, warriors, lovers, wanderers. They have battled each other through the ages, with holy ground their only refuge. Through endless lives and countless battles, they seek purpose, redemption, or dominion. They cannot die unless you take their head, and with it, their power. In the end, there can be only one.
Methos parked his car in the underground parking lot of his building, cutting the engine with a weary sigh. The evening had been pleasant, more so than he would have thought, and yet a strange sensation lingered within him. He grabbed his bag from the passenger seat, opened the door, and extracted himself from the vehicle. As he closed the door, a familiar vibration ran through his chest, a peculiar echo he knew too well. He froze, his gaze swept by an instinctive alarm. This wasn't a simple visitor or a curious neighbor. No, this presence, he recognized it. His instinct immediately put him on the defensive. He gripped the pommel of his sword, which he always kept close at hand, and scanned the surroundings with suspicion. A shot broke the silence, followed by a searing pain. The bullet pierced his heart before he had time to react, and there he saw him. Kronos. A torrent of buried memories surged back, images of rampaging horsemen, burning villages, blood and chaos. The time when they were brothers in arms, bringers of death and terror. But that life belonged to another man, a Methos he had buried centuries ago. Kronos, he murmured, incredulous, before collapsing. The other man gave him a twisted smile. "Welcome back, brother. I missed you too." Then there was nothingness. When he regained consciousness, he found himself locked in the cramped trunk of a moving car. He tried to gather his thoughts and counted about 15 minutes before the vehicle stopped. The trunk opened, revealing Kronos' scarred face. The latter extended a falsely friendly hand. "Long time no see. How do you feel, brother?" "Why should you care?" he snapped. Kronos burst out laughing. "Oh, don't be so sensitive. I've thought a lot about you over the last few centuries. You know, I thought you were dead. And then, recently, rumors started to circulate. Methos, the oldest of us, still alive? I decided to do my own investigation. And here I find you. Not surprising after all. Survival is what you do best. Well, what you used to do best." Methos stared at his former companion, his gaze filled with suspicion. "So what? Did you come to kill me?" "That depends on you," Kronos replied, shrugging. "You have a choice to make." "A choice? Which one?" "Lose your head, or join me." He frowned, bewildered. "Join you? To do what?" Kronos squinted, a mocking smile on his lips and a look of madness in his eyes. "I have a project, a big project." He motioned for him to follow him inside a derelict warehouse. They entered a room cluttered with electronic equipment, where piles of circuit boards, cables, and screens shimmered under a harsh light. Kronos pointed to a table covered with components. "You've always been a man of progress, Methos, and I've always known how to use the tools of my time. Imagine what we could have accomplished if we'd had this." He gestured to the circuits. 3,000 years ago. The latter raised an eyebrow, feigning indifference. I don't need to imagine. What are you planning to build? A faster chariot? Faster? No. More effective. With this, I'm going to turn off the lights of the world. Remember how pathetic they are in the dark? When they're afraid? Pandora will take everything from them. No more electricity, no more drinking water, no more security. Just chaos, and I'll be there to offer them a new order. You're as poetic as ever, Kronos, but you need a key to open a Pandora's box. The latter stared at him intensely, a predatory smile stretching his lips. You, Methos, are the key. Who better than you to infiltrate the circles I can't access? Your knowledge is unparalleled, and your talent for blending into the landscape is incomparable. He leaned in, placing a heavy hand on his former companion's shoulder. I want you to be my emissary, the one who opens the doors and lays the first stones of chaos. Your skills will allow me to decipher these complex systems, to turn their technology against them. You will be my eyes, my ears, and sometimes my blade. Methos frowned, his mind racing. Kronos continued, relentless. You always knew how to survive, but this time, it's not just a matter of survival. It's an opportunity. Together, we could rebuild this world in our image. You will be my strategist, the man behind the curtain. Without you, this is all just a dream. With you, it's a certainty. After a moment of hesitation, Methos let out a sigh. If he wanted to survive, he had no choice. It's good to be back. Kronos burst out laughing, clearly delighted. Perfect. I'll explain the rest in due time. For now, I need you for a small mission. After detailing what he expected from him, he pointed a finger at him, his tone becoming more menacing. And above all, don't you dare betray me. If you run, I will find you. If you try to double-cross me, I will know. And if somehow you betray me, I will take your head, brother. Is that clear? Perfectly, Methos replied in a dark voice. He left the derelict warehouse, Kronos' words still echoing in his mind. Aélis, returning from work, walked through the door of her building with a sigh. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She took it out mechanically, but seeing Noé's name displayed, her stomach clenched. She hesitated for a second before opening the message. So now you don't answer anymore? I guess you were with Adam again. I hope it was worth it. Immediate annoyance burned in her chest. She felt her fingers clench on the phone as her thumb slid across the keyboard. Stop being delusional. What do you want? A detailed report of my every move? She stared at the screen. Too dry, too aggressive. She sighed and deleted the message. She started over. I'm coming home from work. Could you avoid jumping to conclusions? Still too harsh. She sighed again, deleted it again. Finally, she locked her phone and put it back in her jacket pocket. She didn't have the patience for this. Not tonight. She pushed open her apartment door with a distracted gesture, still tense from that simple message. It shouldn't get to her so much. She refused to let Noé have that power over her. But the very fact that she was thinking about it proved that he already did. As she closed the door, one detail escaped her. The lock hadn't resisted her usual motion, as if the door had simply been pushed open, not unlocked. But preoccupied by her exchange with Noé, she noticed nothing. She took a few steps inside, turned on the light. A violent shock hit the back of her head. A searing pain pierced her skull before darkness engulfed her. When she regained consciousness, the air was cold and heavy with humidity. Darkness enveloped her, an oppressive silence weighing down on her. She tried to move, but her wrists and ankles were securely bound. A wave of panic rose within her. Her breathing quickened. Her heart pounded relentlessly. Where was she? What had happened to her? She tried to remember. The door to her apartment, Noé's message, and then nothing. Just that pain at the back of her skull. a door opened with a screech, breaking the silence. A massive silhouette was outlined against the light. A man with a bulky build, his gaze empty and his jaw clenched. His heavy footsteps echoed as he approached her. "What's going on?" she shouted, adrenaline giving her a semblance of strength. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" The man didn't answer. He just grunted before grabbing her abruptly by the wrists. "Someone wants to see you." In the abandoned warehouse where Aélis was held captive, Kronos stood on a platform, watching Methos with a predatory smile. The latter had just entered, his arms laden with the computer components demanded of him. He placed the equipment carefully, his gaze scanning the surroundings. "I see you're following my instructions, brother," Kronos said in a falsely warm tone. "Very good. And to thank you, I have 3 surprises for you." Methos stiffened. Nothing from Kronos was ever truly a gift. With a snap of his fingers, Kronos gave his signal. A familiar, chilling shiver ran down Methos' spine as 3 presences manifested. To the right, Caspian, short, stocky, with a disturbed smirk on his face. In the center, Silas, massive, imposing like a mountain of muscle. And to his left, Aélis. Methos felt his stomach tighten. She was pale, visibly stunned, being dragged unceremoniously by Silas. "Well, aren't you pleased?" Kronos said, a triumphant smile on his lips. "I promised you we'd get the band back together, and here we are, finally reunited." Caspian and Silas stepped toward him to greet him. Methos remained motionless, his gaze fixed on Aélis. Why was she here? What was Kronos planning to do with her? His past life had taught him one thing. His old brother-in-arms never took hostages without reason. Kronos approached the young woman and held her against him with a possessive gesture. She struggled weakly, her breath short, her eyes filled with fear and incomprehension. "And her?" Methos asked, his voice strained to remain neutral. "Why is she here?" Kronos burst out laughing. "Huh, her? She's here for you, brother." Methos frowned slightly. Why would Kronos bother to kidnap her? She had nothing to do with any of this. He didn't understand until an idea dawned on him. His gaze hardened as he realized the truth. Kronos must have seen them together. Their nascent friendship had been enough to arouse his suspicions. He restrained himself from cursing. "What do you mean?" "She," Kronos replied with a cruel smile, "is your guarantee, brother. You see, I know how clever you are, and I had the impression that my grand project wasn't motivating you 100%. So she will stay here to ensure your cooperation. The slightest betrayal from you, and I take her head." With a quick motion, he drew a dagger and pressed it against Aélis' chest. The young woman's breath hitched. Methos saw pure terror cross her gaze. "Stop, Kronos." "Ah, there, I recognize the Methos I used to love. Always trying to negotiate." He drove the blade in. Aélis just had time to meet Methos' horrified gaze before a searing pain overwhelmed her, and she slumped into unconsciousness, collapsing in the arms of her captor. She woke up with a deep breath, disoriented and trembling. Her body was numb, as if her mind was still preventing her from fully perceiving her surroundings. For an instant, she felt suspended, unable to connect her last memory to where she was now. The darkness weighed on her, oppressive, and her gaze slowly slid over the metallic contours of a narrow cage. Her fingers brushed the cold floor beneath her, an old, rough blanket barely enough to cushion the hardness of the concrete. She didn't move right away, too frozen in this unreal sensation that made her feel like none of this was truly happening. But the blood on her skin, sticky and warm, prevented her from clinging to this illusion any longer. Slowly, she looked down at her torso. Where Kronos had plunged the blade, she expected to see a gaping wound, a still vivid injury that would justify the pain she should be feeling. But there was nothing. Just intact skin, a torn black fabric, and that large stain spreading across her dress. Her breath hitched. No, it wasn't possible. She closed her eyes for a moment, desperately searching for a logical explanation. A staging? An illusion caused by the shock? Her mind refused to provide a coherent explanation. She tried to slow her breathing, to calm the frantic beating of her heart, but every thought led her back to the same unacceptable conclusion. She had been wounded. She had felt the blade pierce her flesh. She remembered the atrocious pain, the suffocating fear, and yet here she was, very much alive. A shiver ran through her as another memory surfaced. Adam. He was there. He had seen her, and he had done nothing. He hadn't tried to free her, hadn't tried to defend her. He had just stood there, motionless, a spectator of her distress. A cold weight settled on her chest. Why? She gently shook her head, as if to chase away the question, as if by refusing to think about it, she could erase what she had seen. Her instinct screamed that something was wrong, but her mind still refused to confront it. Not now. It was too much. She closed her eyes and hugged her knees to her chest, seeking a semblance of comfort in this childlike posture. She didn't want to understand. Someone would surely come. She didn't need to think about all of this. She could just wait. She clung to this thought like a lifeline, pushing back the turmoil of her questions and the strange truth that threatened to emerge. So she clung to the only absurd hope she had left. Maybe if she kept her eyes closed long enough, all of this would disappear, and sleep finally carried her away. A brutal vibration woke her with a start, echoing in her skull like an internal alarm. A groan escaped her as her hands pressed against her temples. When she opened her eyes, Silas, immense and imposing, stood before her cage. "Well, you're finally awake," he said in his deep, almost soft voice. She didn't answer, frozen by fear and incomprehension. He continued, "You'll get used to it." His words, although spoken with a strange kindness, made no sense to her. You'll get used to it? Was he talking about her captivity? About this incomprehensible phenomenon? This life taken and then given back? About the pain of dying or that disturbing vibration that had woken her? She remained silent, hoping he would say more. Silas, apparently satisfied with her mute listening, began a long monologue. He spoke to her about immortality, about the first death, always the most striking, and the time it took to get used to dying, then coming back to life. He described it as a routine, a lesson to be learned to better manage the pain. His words were absurd, unreal, but something in his simple, almost soothing tone made her think he posed no immediate threat. Her jailer's voice was suddenly interrupted by another vibration, this time sharper, which resonated in her mind. He turned his head, and his gaze went to the platform. Methos appeared, his face closed. "Silas, come," he ordered simply, before disappearing again into the darkness. Silas obeyed without a word, leaving Aélis alone with her thoughts. The hours passed, slow and relentless. Hunger and thirst gnawed at her. The hangar, crossed by a few rays of light filtering through dirty windows, offered no respite. Finally, a new vibration announced Methos' visit. He arrived alone, a bottle of water in his hand. Aélis rushed to the bars, clinging to them like a lifeline. "Here," he said, handing the bottle through the bars. "You don't really need it, but it's more pleasant this way." She ignored the bottle, her hands tightening further on the bars. "Adam," she whispered, desperate. "What is going on? What are you doing here?" He looked down, placed the bottle on the ground, and crossed his arms. After a moment's hesitation, he finally answered in a measured tone, "I can't explain." Aélis felt a mix of anger and disbelief rising within her. "Are you with them?" Methos remained silent for an instant, his gaze evasive. He finally shrugged slightly. "It's not that simple." Not that simple? This answer dug a pit of bitterness within her. He was standing there, a few feet away from her, while she was caged like an animal and he dared to claim it wasn't simple? Why am I here? He hesitated again before sighing. Hold on, Aélis. Hang in there. That was the last straw. A nervous, bitter laugh escaped her. Hold on. Really? You want me to hang in there while you play guard dog for these lunatics? Methos closed his eyes for an instant. His position was untenable. Kronos had always known how to manipulate his weaknesses, and this time, he had played the perfect card. Aélis was just collateral damage, caught in a game whose rules and scope she did not know. But he didn't answer. She felt her throat tighten, her body tense. Her mind raced, searching for logic, a reason, anything that could justify what she was seeing. But there was nothing. Nothing but a wall, cold and insensitive. So she struck, not with her fists, not on the bars. She struck with words. So that was it, huh? All that playing around at the dojo, it was just to lead me here? The words had escaped before she could stop them, like a knife thrust given without thinking. Methos lifted his head slightly, but his expression didn't change. His silence, his lack of reaction, was worse than a lie. A chilling shiver ran down the back of her neck. She should have swallowed her words, admitted she knew nothing, that it was pure paranoid delusion, but she clung to this anger like a lifeline, refusing to back down. At least tell me the truth. Did you approach me for this since the beginning? Her own breath was trembling. He remained frozen, arms crossed, before finally looking away. I can't explain, not now, he repeated in a lower voice. She felt a wave of pure, uncontrollable rage overwhelm her. Is that all you have to say? He didn't reply. Adam, why won't you talk to me? She screamed as he already turned on his heel to climb the stairs back to the platform. Her cries went unanswered. With a furious gesture, she hit the bars. A dull pain instantly radiated through her hand. But she didn't care. She wanted to break something, destroy the impassivity he displayed, force him to react, to explain himself. But he didn't turn back. She watched him walk away, each step making him more inaccessible, more foreign. Away from her, Methos climbed the stairs, his jaw clenched, his body tense with frustration. He couldn't do much for her. Not yet. He needed time, patience, and for that, he had to play Kronos' game. He let out a sigh, swallowing his annoyance, and clenched his fists. He hated this situation. Aélis' days ran together in an oppressive haze, punctuated by the visits of her jailers. Silas, with his rough but almost candid attitude, was the one who stayed by her side most often. He sometimes spoke to her, awkwardly, as if trying to reassure her without really understanding why. He would sometimes slip her food secretly, like a child defying an authority he dared not confront. Caspian, on the other hand, was a constant threat, unpredictable and disturbing. He would stare at her with a wild look, savoring her discomfort, spending long moments playing with a blade or whispering senseless words. Every time he lingered too close to the cage, she tensed, holding her breath, hoping he would eventually lose interest. Kronos came daily, ensuring her submission with his mocking smile, taking pleasure in her fear. He spoke to her as if she were just a toy in his hands, savoring every shudder he could provoke. Methos appeared sporadically, still as distant, but never completely indifferent. Through his gestures, a bottle of water, a piece of soap, a slightly less rough blanket, she perceived a semblance of protection, however slight. Yet, every time she tried to catch his eye, he avoided her. He was no longer Adam. He was no longer the man who joked with her at the dojo. Here, he was something else, and she didn't understand what. One day, as she exchanged a word with Silas, Kronos barked. "Silas, shut up! You're not here to chat!" The latter complied, avoiding Aélis' gaze. From then on, their conversations died out, and she found herself plunged into an even more suffocating solitude. Little by little, time lost its meaning, darkness and light merging into an eternal twilight. Hope, for its part, crumbled day after day. In a separate room, Methos leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his mind restless. He blamed himself. He blamed himself for having been too careless, for not having noticed earlier that they were being watched. And most of all, he blamed himself regarding Darius. He had never been one to make promises, let alone tie himself to others, but he knew what his friend expected of him. "I never claimed to be the only one who could help her." Those words came back to him, heavy with meaning. He hadn't answered at the time, preferring to deflect the conversation, to shirk the responsibility they wanted to impose on him. But now, Aélis was here, a prisoner in a game that was beyond her, and he had done nothing to prevent it. He clenched his fists, inhaling deeply to calm his frustration. He couldn't afford to make a mistake. Not now. He knew Kronos too well to allow himself any recklessness. Fear rumbled within him, though he pushed it down under an apparent indifference. He had already seen what his former brother was capable of. He knew how far he would go to get what he wanted. Disobeying him meant death. He had to play along. For now, he thought of Silas. The huge colossus might be a formidable warrior, but he remained simple, almost naive. He obeyed Kronos out of habit, but Methos knew he wasn't evil. Caspian, on the other hand, he shuddered thinking about him. Caspian hadn't changed. He was still as unstable, unpredictable, and dangerous. In the past, even among the Horsemen, Methos had known never to turn his back on him. Even today, that rule remained. He closed his eyes for a moment, images of the distant past surfacing in his mind. Burning villages, screams, Caspian laughing amidst the carnage, his eyes lit with uncontrollable madness. Silas standing motionless after a massacre, as if he didn't understand what he had done. And Kronos watching them all, satisfied, master of this chaos. A bitter taste filled his mouth. He was no longer that man. Darius had understood it long before him. His friend had seen him change. Where Methos had always believed he was merely surviving, and now he was screwing everything up. He let out a joyless laugh. "You'd be proud of me, Darius." He had fought not to be who he once was, but Kronos had just dragged him back to hell, and an innocent was trapped with him. After several days of detention, Aélis's oppressive daily life suddenly shifted. That day, Kronos assigned Methos and Silas to an outside mission, while he left on his own for a pressing matter. Before leaving the hangar, he gave clear instructions. Caspian was to watch the prisoner. Kronos slipped away first, followed by Methos and Silas shortly after. As they drove a few hundred meters away, a bad feeling crept into Methos. The idea of leaving Caspian alone with Aélis made him sick. He made an excuse about forgetting something, turned the car around, and parked near the hangar. Silas, unbothered, agreed to wait. Methos entered discreetly, his goal in mind: retrieve his sword and make sure everything was all right. But as soon as he crossed the threshold, he heard a dull thud, followed by a muffled scream. In the gloom of the hangar, Caspian prowled near the cage. His twisted smile widened when he saw the terror in the prisoner's eyes. "You know, in the asylum where I was locked up, there weren't many women," he drawled. "I can't remember what that tastes like anymore." He slowly ran his tongue over his lips before unhooking a set of keys from the wall. He let them slide between his fingers, savoring every second of tension he instilled. Aélis felt icy panic knot in her stomach. Her body screamed at her to run, but where? She instinctively backed away as Caspian inserted the key into the padlock. A click sounded, and the door swung open. He dropped the keys to the floor, as if to emphasize his contempt for the rules imposed by Kronos. "Look at you," he murmured, advancing slowly, "a poor little defenseless thing." She knew she was no match for him. Her training at the dojo had given her a few reflexes, but against a man like Caspian, he stood no chance. Yet she refused to remain passive. Her gaze swept the room. No exit, no weapon, She had to act fast. When he lunged at her, she dodged as best she could and kicked him in the leg. It wasn't enough to hurt him, but it allowed her to retreat toward the exit. Caspian growled, more amused than annoyed. "Oh, you want to play?" With a quick movement, he grabbed her wrist and violently pulled her back. Aélis lost her balance and fell to the floor. She tried to break free, scratching his arm with all her strength, but Caspian, galvanized by her struggle, brutally flipped her onto her back and pinned her firmly to the ground. "Stop moving," he whispered, his foul breath grazing her cheek. His free hand reached for his belt. Aélis's panic exploded into a surge of adrenaline. She stopped thinking. She aimed for his face and spat on him before digging her fingers into his eyes. Caspian screamed and slightly recoiled, just enough for her to attempt to crawl backward. But her physical strength was still negligible against him. He straightened up, furious, ready to make her pay for the insult. That's when Methos burst in. "Caspian!" His voice cracked like a whip. His sword was pointed toward them. The latter released his prey, slowly raising his head, a delirious smile on his lips. "You arrived at the best time, Methos." "Back off, now." The immortal's icy tone left no room for interpretation. He slowly descended the steps, his gaze boring into his former brother-in-arms with menacing intensity. "You were never very good at sharing," Caspian continued mockingly. "Just a little piece. I'll give her back intact, I promise." Methos didn't reply. He took another step forward, slightly raising the blade. His look conveyed nothing but murderous calm. "Touch her again, and I swear you will die today." Caspian backed away, but his gaze still shone with that uncontrollable madness. He glanced at the stairs and spotted Silas, who had just returned and was observing them, his axe in hand. "Silas, guard the door. Methos and I have a dispute to settle, between brothers." "You are not my brother!" Methos roared, lunging at him. Caspian leaped sideways to grab his own sword and counter the attack. Silas, seeing the fight begin, rushed down the stairs. Aélis, taking advantage of the confusion, tried to escape, but Silas caught her with a quick movement. He violently shoved her back into the cage and slammed the door shut, hastily locking the padlock without noticing the keys lying on the ground. She struggled to her feet, breathless, and watched helpless as the fight broke out. Methos and Caspian circled each other, searching for an opening. Metal clashed, each blow echoing in the hangar. Silas, arms crossed, watched without intervening. A fight between brothers in arms had to take its course. Since Kronos wasn't there, he had no intention of interfering. Aélis clenched the bars, her eyes fixed on Adam. He had thrown himself into this fight without hesitation. She didn't know why. Out of guilt? Out of instinct? One thing was certain. If he lost, she was doomed. She looked down at the floor. The keys to the cage lay just inches from her feet. A slim hope, but hope nonetheless. The two immortals were locked in a merciless fight, each struggling with an intensity that left no room for weakness. Swords clashed, their blades tearing the air in a metallic din that echoed through the empty hangar. Their movements, swift and precise, gradually led them toward the staircase opposite the cage, and soon they disappeared from Aélis' view. She could only hear the echo of the iron noises and the shouts. Silas, who was watching nearby, diverted his attention from the cage to follow the fight with his eyes, moving closer to the staircase without even glancing her way. Aélis felt her heart race, seeing an opportunity there. Gathering all her courage, she silently reached out and grabbed the padlock keys. She contemplated fleeing, but Silas was not far. If she tried to open the cage now and he turned around, she would be caught in the act, with no hope of escape. She tensed, holding her breath before forcing herself to wait. She had to wait for the right moment. Her mind drifted toward Adam despite herself. Adam. She no longer trusted him. This man standing opposite Caspian, sword raised, had nothing to do with the one who served as her occasional confidant. He was a warrior, ruthless, cold, and possessing a speed that defied understanding. Yet, she couldn't ignore what he had done. He had saved her from Caspian's clutches. He had stood up against him without hesitation. And now, he was fighting for his life. Silas's panicked scream echoed through the warehouse. The sound of clashing metal ceased, and Aélis saw a strange, almost ethereal mist rise before bright flashes of light tore through the darkness. Frozen with fear, she watched, her hands clenched around the keys she had just retrieved. Her breath was short, her head buzzing. She didn't understand anything she was seeing. And yet, she knew she had to make a decision. When Silas descended the stairs, his expression overwhelmed by what he had just witnessed, she felt a wave of panic wash over her. She hurriedly opened the cage and escaped, breathing in a gulp of air, marked by a strange metallic smell. Her first instinct was to flee. An opening was offered to her, a chance to escape this hell. Her gaze swept the hangar, searching for an exit. Yet instead of immediately running towards the exit, she hesitated, her heart pounded in her chest, a part of her screaming to leave, to get to safety. But another part, deeper, more irrational, urged her to look back, to understand. Her gaze landed on a nearby table. A pistol was placed there. She froze for a second, her breath quickening. Her fingers clenched, but she reached out despite herself. The weight of the weapon was both familiar and foreign. She knew how it worked, but she had never aimed at a living being. It's not to kill. She repeated these words, gripping the handle between her fingers. Just to defend myself. She felt her hands tremble, yet her legs moved forward, as if another force, independent of her, was pushing her to go see what was happening. She reached the edge of the platform and saw the scene below. Adam was on his knees, exhausted, in a pool of blood. Beside him lay Caspian's decapitated body, his face frozen in a macabre expression of surprise. Silas, his eyes filled with anger, advanced towards the survivor with an obvious threat. A wave of nausea seized her, but she forced herself to regain control. She had never seen anyone kill until today, and yet, that was what was about to happen before her eyes. Adam could no longer defend himself. He was going to die. Her first instinct was to look away. Go, get out of here. But she didn't move. She knew Silas wouldn't hesitate. He wasn't trembling. He wasn't doubting. So, for the first time, she allowed herself to change her mind. She didn't want to kill, but she refused to watch him die. She gritted her teeth and raised the weapon, her arms outstretched, trying to ignore the fear wrenching her stomach. Her index finger hesitated for a fraction of a second on the trigger. Then she squeezed the trigger. A first shot rang out, almost deafening. The recoil of the weapon made her lose her balance, but she quickly steadied herself. Silas jumped, stopping his movement. His gaze rose to meet hers, both furious and incredulous. She took a deep breath and fired a second time. This time, the bullet hit him. Silas stumbled, his immense silhouette swaying under the impact. She didn't wait to see if he would get up. A third bullet was fired. Silas took a step back, then another, before his massive body slowly toppled backward and collapsed with a dull thud. Aélis remained frozen, breathless, the weapon still raised in front of her. She had just shot someone. She didn't know if she had killed. She didn't even know what difference it made. Methos lifted his head, startled, before looking at the man who had just fallen. With fierce determination, he raised his sword and delivered the fatal blow, severing the giant's head. A few moments later, a white mist escaped Silas's body, floating in the air for an instant before moving toward Methos. Lightning raged again, striking him head-on and forcing him to his knees. His features tightened in pain as the energy engulfed him, transforming the warehouse into a terrifying and fascinating spectacle. Aélis clung to the railing, unable to look away from the scene, until silence fell again. When she finally regained the use of her limbs, she scrambled down the stairs and ran toward him despite herself. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. He nodded, his green eyes half veiled by fatigue. "We have to get out of here, now," he whispered hoarsely. She helped him up and supported him as he picked up his sword, his movements still imbued with the violence of the quickening. Together, they staggered towards the car parked outside. Aélis took the wheel and sped off, leaving the deserted industrial area where Kronos had established his hideout. The heavy silence was finally broken by Methos after several minutes. "Go to Darius's place," he said in a faint but resolute voice. "We'll be safe there." Aélis glanced at him, surprised by this directive. She knew he knew Darius, he had mentioned him before, but she didn't understand why he was so adamant. A new wave of uncertainty washed over her, but she remained silent and headed towards Paris.